Cold tea was the first thing that tore into my consciousness, slicing it into jagged pieces. I opened my eyes and saw darkness. Not the kind that comes with night, but a suffocating, heavy void, like the earth being shoveled onto a coffin lid. Somewhere far away wood cracked, and the sound mixed with the faint stench of gasoline. I slowly turned my head, feeling something warm and sticky sliding down my cheek. Blood. I was tied up. The ropes bit deep into my wrists, leaving raw, burning grooves. My fingers were already numb. Memory returned in fragments. Laughter. The faces of men I once called my friends. Money. The deal we were supposed to sign the next day. And then, the blow to the back of my head. Sorry, brother. Business is business, one of them had said before the darkness swallowed me whole. Now I lay on the cold concrete floor of an abandoned warehouse, and in the corner, flames were already spreading. They had left me for dead. The flames crept closer, their heat licking at my skin. Smoke swirled around me, choking the air from my lungs. My wrists burned from the ropes, every twitch sending jolts of pain up my arms. I twisted, pulled, forced my hands against the sharp edge of a broken pallet behind me. The wood tore at the ropes, and at my skin. My breath came in ragged gasps. The crackling of the fire grew louder. I thought of their faces again, Jake, Mason, and Tyler. I had bled for them. We built our business from nothing, risked everything together. And this was my reward. The rope finally snapped. My hands were free but numb. I clawed at the knot around my ankles, coughed hard as smoke seared my throat. My vision blurred. The nearest door was already blocked by flames. My only chance was the grimy window in the back wall. I staggered toward it, my legs unsteady, my lungs screaming. The glass shattered under my elbow, cutting deep into my forearm. I didn't care. I climbed through, hit the ground outside hard, and lay there, coughing, staring at the night sky. Above me, the warehouse roared in flames. Everything I had inside, my documents, my gear, my life, was gone. But I was alive. And if I was alive, so was my revenge. I lay in the dirt for what felt like hours, the taste of smoke still thick in my mouth. My body ached in ways I didn't know were possible. My head throbbed from the blow they'd given me, and every breath scraped against the rawness in my lungs. Finally, when the distant wail of sirens drifted into the night, I moved. Not toward them. I didn't want help, not from strangers, not from the police, and definitely not from anyone who might ask questions. Questions led to records. Records led to them knowing I'd survived. No. Jake, Mason, and Tyler could never know. Not yet. I stumbled into the tree line behind the warehouse, using the shadows as my shield. The town was a couple miles east, but I knew I couldn't show my face there, not burned, bloodied, and broken. Instead, I headed west. I didn't know exactly where I was going, only that I needed distance, darkness, and time. Hours passed. The fire's glow faded behind me, replaced by the pale wash of dawn. My legs felt like lead, but finally I saw a flicker of hope. A small, boarded-up hunting cabin just off an overgrown trail. The place looked abandoned, but to me it was a palace. I pried the door open and stepped into stale air and dust. A broken chair, a rotting mattress, a rusted lantern. It was nothing. It was everything. I collapsed onto the mattress, every muscle screaming. I slept for what must have been 12 hours straight. When I woke, my body still hurt, but my mind was sharper. And in that sharpness came a single, unshakable truth. They had taken my life, my business, my home, but they hadn't taken my will. For the next week, I stayed in that cabin, patching my wounds, scavenging what I could from the forest and the occasional unlocked shed. I found an old mirror and studied my reflection. My eyes looked different now, harder. No trace of the man who'd once believed in loyalty. I started writing their names on the cabin wall. Jake, Mason, Tyler. Next to each, I carved a line. Those lines weren't just names. They were promises. The days blurred into one another. Dawn bled into dusk, and every hour in between was filled with planning. I didn't have money. I didn't have weapons. Hell, I didn't even have a working phone. But I had something more dangerous, patience. When you've been burned alive in every way that matters, patience becomes your weapon. I began walking into town under the cover of night. I kept to the alleys, the shadows, scavenging whatever I could. Food from dumpsters. Clothes from donation bins. Anything to make me look less like a ghost crawling out of hell. On the 6th night I found it, my first thread. Mason. He was always the weakest link. Not the smartest, not the toughest, but the greediest. Greed makes people careless. I was watching from the shadows of a crumbling brick wall when I saw him stumble out of a back door of O'Malley's bar. Same expensive coat. Same stupid gold chain. He was laughing with some dealer I didn't recognize. His laugh. God, I'd forgotten how much I hated that laugh. I followed. Quiet steps. No rush. Let him think the night belonged to him. They parted ways near an old parking lot. Mason got into a black SUV, the same one we used to drive to business meetings. My blood burned at the sight of it. My money had bought that car. I memorized the license plate. Watched the way he drove. Fast, impatient. He hadn't changed. 2 nights later, I found his place. A 2-story suburban house with a porch light that flickered like it was dying. Mason lived alone now. His girlfriend must have left. I'd heard the rumors even before they betrayed me. I spent another 3 days watching him from across the street. He had patterns, people always do. Work at noon. Drinks at 7. Gambling on Fridays. And always home by 2 in the morning, drunk enough to trip over his own feet. On the 7th night I moved. It was raining. The kind of rain that drowns sound and makes shadows heavier. I slipped into his backyard, over the fence and through the unlocked back door. I didn't need to rush. The storm outside was my cloak. The house smelled like stale beer and takeout. I found him in the kitchen, pouring whiskey into a glass, humming to himself. I let him see me. He froze. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the tile. Jesus Christ. You're supposed to be dead. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. I was. The color drained from his face. Look, it wasn't my idea, okay? Jake. It was all Jake. Save it. I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the fridge. His eyes darted to the knife block on the counter, but I shoved him harder. The sound of his head hitting metal was almost satisfying. This isn't about killing you, I whispered. Not yet. He stammered. What do you want? Information. Everything you know about Jake and Tyler. Their money. Their habits. Where they hide when they're scared. He hesitated for about 3 seconds. Then I twisted his arm just enough to make him scream, and the words started pouring out. Addresses. Names. Dates. When I was done, I leaned in close so he could feel my breath. You get to live tonight, Mason. But every time you see a shadow, you'll wonder if it's me. And one day, it will be. I left him shaking on the kitchen floor, his whiskey bottle spilled across the tile like blood. Back at the cabin, I carved a deep, dark slash through his name on the wall. 1 down. 2 to go. Mason's words stayed with me, echoing in the dark like a gunshot that never fades. Jake was the brain. Tyler was the muscle. Mason was already broken. But Jake was the one who planned it all. He was the one who convinced them that I was worth more dead than alive. And now I knew where he lived. For 3 days I prepared. I walked through the cabin's shadows like a ghost, going over every detail Mason had given me. Jake had a penthouse downtown, high security, private elevator, cameras everywhere. Breaking in wasn't just risky. It was suicide. But then again, I'd already survived my own death once. I scavenged what I could. A black hoodie from a thrift bin, gloves from a gas station, a cheap burner phone from a pawn shop I visited after hours. I built tools from scraps. A pry bar from an old steel rod, lock picks from bent nails. Crude, but they do. When the night came, the city was slick with rain again. It was the kind of night that hides monsters in plain sight. I started on foot, slipping between alleys until the glass towers of downtown rose above me like steel giants. Jake's building loomed the tallest, its windows glowing warm against the storm. Getting in through the front was impossible. But the parking garage, that was another story. I waited until a black Mercedes rolled in, its driver distracted by his phone. The gate opened, I slipped in behind, staying low. Security cameras dotted the ceiling. I kept my hood up, head down, timing my steps between the sweeping arcs of the lenses. Jake's car was easy to spot, a silver sports coupe with vanity plates that screamed arrogance. The man never could resist showing off. I followed the elevator shaft up the maintenance stairs, silent but steady. By the time I reached the top floor, my heartbeat was slow, controlled. I'd spent years trusting Jake with my life. Now I trusted only my hate. His door was guarded by a keypad lock. I tried the first code Mason had given me. It beeped red. Second code, green. Inside, the air smelled of money and power. Leather, cologne, expensive liquor. The city stretched below in glittering silence, but here it was quiet enough to hear my own breath. Jake was in his office, his back to me, talking on the phone. I stepped forward, my shadow stretching across the floor until it touched his chair. He turned. His eyes went wide. No, you're dead. That's the problem with killing someone, Jake, I said softly. You only get one chance. He reached for a drawer, I knew there'd be a gun in it, but I was faster. I slammed the drawer shut on his hand, heard the satisfying crack of knuckles breaking. He screamed, stumbled back, clutching his fingers. I didn't kill him. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out the burner phone, snapped a picture of him kneeling, bleeding, terrified. Every man has a breaking point, I told him. I'm going to find yours. And when I do, I'll burn everything you've ever loved. Like you did to me. I left him there, in his palace of glass, with the storm raging outside. But as I stepped into the hallway, I saw something on the wall. A framed photo of Jake, Mason, and Tyler, standing in front of the smoldering remains of my warehouse. They were smiling. And in that moment, I decided Tyler wouldn't get the mercy the others had. Tyler was different. He wasn't a schemer like Jake or a coward like Mason. He was a predator. And predators didn't scare easily. Mason had told me Tyler worked security now, private contracts for nightclubs, warehouses, shady protection deals. But more importantly, he fought underground. Illegal fights where the crowd paid in cash and the losers sometimes didn't walk away. That was where I'd find him. It took a week to track him down. I followed whispers in bars, waited in alleys, handed $20 bills to men who looked like they'd sell their own mothers for the right price. Eventually, I found the place, an old shipping yard, abandoned except for the warehouse at the far end. Inside, the air was thick with sweat, beer, and blood. Men crowded around a cage in the center, shouting, throwing money, the smell of desperation heavy. And there he was, Tyler. Bigger than I remembered, his muscles thick under the harsh lights. He was fighting a man half his size, and still he fought dirty, elbow to the jaw, a knee to the gut, and the other man crumpled. Tyler roared, raising his arms to the crowd's cheers. I waited until the fight ended and he stepped into the back room, his towel over his neck. Tyler, I said. He froze. Slowly he turned, confusion melting into disbelief. No. We burned you alive. You tried. He laughed. It wasn't nervous laughter. It was the laugh of a man who thinks he's untouchable. You should have stayed dead, he growled. Now I have to finish the job. He charged. The first punch grazed my jaw, heavy, fast. The second, I caught in both hands, twisting hard until his shoulder popped. He roared, swinging with his other hand, but I ducked, driving my knee into his ribs. This wasn't like Mason. I couldn't just scare Tyler. He needed to be broken. We crashed into a metal rack, tools raining down around us. He grabbed a wrench, swung. I sidestepped, the blow glancing off my arm, and drove my elbow into his throat. He gasped, dropping the wrench. I pressed him against the wall, forearm at his neck. You think you're the strong one? You think you're the wolf? I hissed. You were never the wolf, Tyler. You were the dog Jake kept on a chain. His face turned red, breath sputtering. Finally he nodded, choking out a single word. Jake. What about him? He's running. Selling off everything. Said you'd come for him. Said he's leaving the country in 2 days. I smiled. That's the smartest thing he's done yet. But it won't save him. I let Tyler slide to the floor, gasping, clutching his throat. I didn't kill him. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I wanted Jake to know exactly what was coming. Jake was moving fast and I had less than 48 hours. Mason was hiding, Tyler was nursing a shattered ego, but Jake was already halfway out the door. I needed him cornered. Alone. No guards. No escape. Through Mason's info, I knew Jake kept a private safe house on the edge of the city, an old farmhouse he'd inherited. No cameras. No neighbors for miles. It was where he went when he wanted to disappear. I headed there under a moonless sky, my pack light but filled with everything I needed: rope, duct tape, a small crowbar, and the one photo I'd taken from his office. The one of them laughing in front of my burning warehouse. When I got there, the farmhouse was dark except for a dim light in the upstairs window. His car was in the driveway. Perfect. I slipped in through the back door, my footsteps silent on the creaking floorboards. The smell of dust and old wood filled my lungs. Upstairs, Jake was at a desk, papers scattered, a half-packed bag on the floor. He was muttering to himself, too focused to notice me until I was standing right behind him. He turned, and I slammed his face into the desk. Blood splattered across the papers. He groaned, reaching for something, but I yanked him back, locking his arms. Told you I'd find you, I said. You don't have to do this, he gasped. Oh, I do. I tied him to the chair, making sure the rope bit into his wrists. Then I pulled the photo from my pocket and held it in front of his face. Smile, I said. Just like you did here. He swallowed hard. I didn't want to do it. Then why were you smiling? Silence. I walked to the window, looking out into the empty fields. You took everything from me, Jake. my business, my home, my life. And you thought you'd get away with it because you had power. But power's just an illusion. The moment someone sees through it, you're just a man. I turned back, crouching in front of him. And you, Jake, you're not even a good man. His eyes darted to the door like someone might burst in and save him. But no one was coming. Jake's breathing was uneven, his eyes flicking from me to the ropes on his wrists. He was calculating. Always calculating. You're making a mistake, he tried again, his voice trembling just enough to make me wonder if it was real fear or just another performance. It wasn't my idea. It was Tyler's. Mason just went along. I tried to stop them. I laughed. A low, humorless sound. You're going to die with that lie still on your tongue? His lips tightened. Silence again. I stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under my boots. You want to know what's funny, Jake? I didn't even care about revenge at first. I just wanted to survive. But then I kept remembering your face in that photo. That smile. I took the photo from my pocket again, held it just inches from his eyes. And I realized you enjoyed it. You enjoyed watching my life burn. He flinched. You don't know what they were going to do to me if I didn't. I slammed my fist into the desk beside his head. He jumped. You think I care about your excuses? The room was still except for the sound of his breathing and the faint ticking of a clock somewhere downstairs. I leaned in, my voice low, almost calm. I'm not here for explanations, Jake. I'm here for endings. I left him tied to the chair while I went downstairs. In the old kitchen, I found what I was looking for, a can of kerosene sitting by the back door, probably left over from winters long gone. The smell hit me like a memory. When I came back upstairs, Jake's eyes widened. No. No, you can't. I set the can down, pulled out a box of matches from my jacket. You took my home from me in fire, I said, unscrewing the cap. It's only fair I return the gesture. I doused the floorboards first, letting the liquid soak in. The scent grew sharp, heavy. Jake struggled against the ropes, but they held. You'll burn too, he shouted. I smiled faintly. I walked out of one fire. I can do it again. I struck the match. The tiny flame danced in the dim room, its reflection flickering in Jake's terrified eyes. You know what the worst part is? I asked quietly. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm done. I dropped the match. The flames caught instantly, racing across the kerosene, crawling up the walls. Jake screamed, the sound mixing with the roar of fire. I turned and walked toward the stairs, the heat licking at my back. By the time I stepped outside into the cold night, the upstairs windows were glowing orange. I didn't look back again. I made it to the tree line before the first sirens began to wail in the distance. My chest was tight, not from the smoke, but from the strange emptiness settling in. Back at the cabin, I picked up the old knife I'd used to carve their names into the wall. Mason's name was crossed out. Tyler's too. I took the blade and slashed a deep line through Jake's. 3 names. 3 promises kept. For a long time I just stared at the wall. I thought I'd feel something. Relief. Satisfaction. Maybe even peace. But all I felt was the silence. Some debts can be repaid. Some scars never will. I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my skin. Somewhere out there life was still going on. People laughing, working, loving. But for me there was only the road. And as I walked into the darkness I realized, this wasn't the end. It was just the end of their story. Mine was still being written.